looking at 13, do you have a pool of 15 guys, you know you get one of them? How does that work? When it's because you're in the middle of the first round, it's a lot of things out of your control.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, obviously, you have to stack your board for how you like it, you know. So, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you pick. You have to decide for as you're grading for your team and how you view the players for how they fit your system and for what the coaching staff's looking for. You just end up stacking the board. And so, how many numbers of players in the first round, whatever that number is, that's where it falls. And then after that, you start looking at, you know, you talk about scenarios, whether it's trading up, trading down, you know, what it would take to move here or move there, or what would we want if someone came up. So, yeah, you start talking about all that stuff, and we've been doing that with Brandon Shore as well, so it's been fun.
Chris, how certain are you that you will get offensive line help in the first 3 rounds of this draft?
You know, I would say we feel good about it, you know, but again, you go through your process and how it falls and how players get picked, you know, it's out of our control after 13, you know. So, you know, it's an area, yeah, we're going to look to upgrade just like every position on our roster.
How much communication do you try to have in advance with clubs and to let them know, hey, in this round or maybe in all rounds, we're open to trading up or down?
Oh, it started way back in the owners' meetings, you know, between just every team does it. You know, every guy comes up, hey, you know, if you're interested in coming down or we might be interested in coming up. So stay in touch with a few teams here or there, but, you know, over the next week or so to really start to heat up, I would guess probably, especially next Monday, Tuesday.
How interested in general do you feel you want to be in being active and not just necessarily staying in your spot in the draft?
Yeah, no, wide open anything. So, again, whatever helps us as an organization get better and keep upgrading the talent here, we'll definitely do that. So, wide open to anything.
Is this a draft where you want more picks or a draft where you want higher picks?
Again, it's always tough because it's like last year we didn't expect Minka to be there at 11. You know, so again, it's once that happens, you kind of see how it starts to fall after the first 7 or 8 picks maybe, and then you'll start, okay, it looks like, you know, there may be 4 guys that we like that look like, well, there. So, all right, as we get closer to our pick and you're 2 picks away, like, okay, looks like there will be guys definitely available that we like, then we'll be aggressive trying to move back, you know. And then also if there's 1 or 2 guys we feel really good about and they fall into like 8 or 9 of the picks, say, hey, well, maybe it's worth us going to get this guy because we feel that strongly as an organization.
Before you walked in, we were having a debate about the last 3 years, whether you had final say in the draft or not. Did you have final say in the draft the last 3 years?
Yes, I did. It was a collaboration. I mean, as you know, and you know me, it's as we talked about, I'm not going to force a coach to take a player because that doesn't work. You know, if the coach doesn't want a player and I say, no, we're taking him, and then works out one way or the other, good, but if it doesn't, it just creates that animosity and then the distrust, you know, and it's not worth it because you've been around here long enough, you've seen a lot of that happen. So I'm not going to force any player on anyone, but yes, I had final say.
So is this year any different?
No, because you know me, I'm going to be very collaborative, and that's the only way it works. And again, you guys have all heard stories here and stuff in the past, and it's a combination of coaching staff, personnel, all working together, having the same vision, getting on the same page together of picking the players that we feel are good fits for us as an organization.
Chris, your thoughts this year about trading down, and I mean in relation to if you think you have a good player at 13, would you trade down and take the chance at 2, say, so-so players in the 20s of the first round?
I would say you should always have, and again, this is just me, a list of maybe a handful of guys that you definitely take no matter where. Like, they're there, these are the guys you're taking. And these are guys we feel are impact players that you don't. But as you move down, you get closer, and then you get there, and there's a group of players that are good players. You got 3 at that pick. You may say, hey, all right, we can move back a few spots and get one of these guys for sure and create some more picks for later in the draft.
Given how many needs there are and that you're just starting this rebuilding program, is it not maybe a little bit more likely that you might try to go for a maximum number of picks this year rather than, for lack of a better term, quality all the way at the top?
Again, like I said, it's what happens before us is out of our control, you know, in terms of how we like and how other teams view players. But I would say if there was a player that fell that we thought was an impact, like franchise type player that would do it, then we would talk about it, and again, some of the moves we've made this offseason has given us some the ability to move some, even if it's moving some of our picks next year to move up to help us. So I would say, again, everything's wide open for us.
Chris, there's a lot of debate about this year's quarterbacks class. How would you evaluate this year's class? You think it's as strong as last year? Maybe not quite as strong? How would you say it?
Again, because we didn't spend a lot of time with a lot of those guys last year, we obviously thought a couple of those quarterbacks last year were really special. I think this class is a good class of quarterbacks. I would say that, again, like all of them, this class probably has some players that haven't started as many games as you would like to see, in terms of helping you paint the picture for what they could be. So it's a little more projection on a lot of them. But I would say overall it's a good quarterback class.
Is it fair to say that even if it's not in the first or second round, that you would like in some rounds to take at least one quarterback this year?
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to upgrade all the positions, like I said, the depth, to create the competition to make everyone better. But again, we're not going to reach for anyone just to take one and do it, because then that's just, you're passing on a player just for a need at that point to say it, because everyone feels we need to get better. Because at that point, if you get down and you're just reaching in the third round, but you're passing on a guy that could be a starting tackle or something, then you've hurt your franchise.
Do you see any potential franchise quarterbacks in this draft?
There could be, yeah. I mean, it's every class, you know what I mean? But quarterbacks have been so hit and miss over, you go study them. It's 50% or less, end up becoming even good starting quarterbacks. So it's hard to say that, but I mean, every class has, one or two quarterbacks that have become a good player in the league.
Are you in the Parcells clan where they believe that starting quarterbacks, you need more than 1 year? You need a good substantial sample size of college starts to really understand who he is.
You got going with the old Bill quarterback thing. I do think it's important, the starts, because it helps paint the picture again, because the guy's seen and played more football, but these kids nowadays are playing 7-on-7 football. You've seen it. The tournaments have been going on, and they had one at, I think it's St. Thomas last week. So these guys have been doing this, throwing the football and doing all these camps, working with these quarterback gurus, some of these kids since high school. So a lot of them have been exposed to more probably than what they were back in the day in terms of the football knowledge. So, no, I think it's part of the picture in terms of when you're talking about a player, but I don't think it should rule you out for ever picking somebody.
The defensive line is talent-rich this draft. How many of those guys, inside or outside, would you say are elite defensive linemen?
Off the top of my head, there's probably 5 there, that you think are, because it's going to be scheme specific. Some will be really good, 30 front fits, and other guys will be the 40 front. So, but I'd say there's 5 really good players that you feel really good about. Then there's, after that, I mean, elite, but then there's a lot of good players too in terms.
And that, numbers-wise, you will probably have an opportunity at one of those 5, right? Because everybody won't need
Yeah, we have a chance. I think so. I would think so. But again, it's like with the quarterbacks. Who knows? If people feel there's quarterbacks here, that you may have everyone trying to trade up to get quarterbacks early. So it's always hard to say.
Chris, the line generally is acknowledged as the best position in the draft. Did you see any other positions outside of that stand out to you as being really strong?
I would say the receiver class is probably deeper than people think. There's a couple really good, but it's a deep class. I think you can get good value picks, for the first 3 rounds there. I would say it's a good offensive line class as well. A lot of potential of guys to be really good. There are kind of some young players that maybe have to mature a little more, but I do think it has a chance to end up, if all those kids do the things the right way, has a chance of being a good offensive line class as well.
You mentioned potential. How do you weigh potential versus production, and which one do you prioritize?
Yeah, it's always hard because you'll have some 21-year-old kids that have, I guess, lack of a better word, been coddled a little bit, and so now they're going into a man's world now, where you're going to have to block men, and you're going to have to do things the right way. You can't take plays off or time off. Where, I was joking with the guy that we had in on a visit that's a good player here on a 30 visit, and Barry probably knows who it is. But he was. I was telling him, and he was self-admitted. I was like, man, I said, I watched you against this top 10 team, and you dominated. You played great. Then I watched you against Appalachian State blocking a guy like me, and guys running around you, and he's like, yeah, he goes, I get up for the big games, and he's like, I got to be better focused. And I said, well, you realize you're going to a league where every week you're playing like someone at the top. And he's like, I know, I'm working at it. So that's what you deal with a lot of these kids. You're just trying to determine if they're going to be mature enough and if they're going to have that love for the game to do things the right way.
When you hear something like that, does that turn you off, or is that something you're like, can we shape that guy? Can we get that out of him? Or you're like, at this point, you should have it?
It's a little bit of a concern, but it's also, the guy's 21 years old, and you kind of weigh it because there's been a lot of good players in this league that have had those issues that may have not gotten drafted where they should have, and then they become great players in the league because, whether they matured or got with the coaching staff that pushed them to do things a different way, or some veteran on a team took him under his wing, and the guy matured and became a good player. So there's so many factors, when you're dealing with human beings. So.
Your chair, can you tell us, Rashad Jones, do you expect him to be on the team this year? Have you given him permission to seek a trade? Where do you stand with Rashad Jones?
No, I haven't given him permission to seek a trade. He doesn't want to trade. At least he has not informed me. Rashad's going to be here. As you guys know, I've known Rashad probably the longest of anyone here. I ended up going before the draft and ended up spending a full day with him trying to get to know him when Nick was here. I ended up spending a lot of time getting to know him and trying to figure out who he was as a person. And I like Rashad a lot. And, this is a voluntary camp, and, he chose not to be here. Would love to have him here, but he's a Miami Dolphin. But, hey, he's earned the right to do it. And he's not the only guy in the league doing it, So it's voluntary, and we know how this game is for these guys. But no, we have not given him permission. He has not asked.
Some of the factors and things you're going to consider when you're wrestling between the top 2 offensive tackle versus the top 5 defensive linemen. What are some things you're going to take into consideration when at 13 that could be a decision you have to make?
Yeah, and obviously when you're making that pick at 13, you want guys that are tough, competitive, the passion for football, things we talk about, smart, going to do things the right way. Because, if you're going to miss, you want to make sure you've given yourself a small margin for error as you can in terms of when you're taking someone. So you look for all those traits, and then at the end of the day, it always falls out inevitably when you talk to coaches and stuff, and we'll go through it and go through the roster and talk about, and if they're both equal and they're both there, then on draft day we'll make the decision, and depending on what we value more for our team and roster going forward.
Do you sometimes say, well, we can get this position in the next round? In your experience, how has that worked out? When it's really close, do you say, well, we think the position group is stronger in the next round or 2, and so you go the other position? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, there'll be some. There's always deeper positions like we talked about. Like we were talking about the receivers being a position that there's value. So, but you never want to bank on saying, oh, I'm going to get this guy in the second round, because then inevitably it always comes back where you're like, we missed. He goes 3 picks before you. So, again, you just go through your process with the board and stacking it the way you feel and how you would take them. We have all those conversations where there's this nose tackle versus this wide receiver. Where are we in terms of what we need for the roster? So we go through it. But no, you just got to take the best player for the team at that point in time.
It might be hard to predict, but how many starters would you hope to get out of this draft?
Oh, I'm sure like every team would love to have 7 starters come out of it, but as we all know, it's not a perfect in terms of when you're dealing with trying to pick human beings and projecting them from college to pro, but would love for everyone to know that's not realistic. If we can get 3 starters, I'd be happy, and good contributors to back up depth, I'd be happy with that. And so that's always the goal, at least try and come out with hopefully, 3 starters, and then the rest of that, hopefully the rest would be gravy.
Draft is important, obviously, but when you're building almost exclusively through the draft, as maybe you might be this year, does that not raise the level of this really needs to be a great draft for it to pop for us, to raise the level of the team?
Yes, for me, the pressure is it's self-imposed. I want every draft to be great, I'm like everyone. I would love for every pick to work, and then everyone's saying how great a job you do, and and everyone says, wow, But it's going to happen. You're going to miss on guys, and you're going to get criticized. But at the end of the day, when you build through the draft, yeah, it's important. And then the most important thing is making sure the coaches and scouts are all on the same page of what we're looking for, so that we can try and eliminate the mistakes that are inevitably going to happen, but you hopefully try and limit to maybe one a draft or something like that.
Charles Harris has had a slow start. He is your first draft pick under your name as general manager. A lot of concerns about scheme fit. Obviously, the scheme is changing now, but how do you ensure that the scheme is right with what they're doing, running a hybrid defense, considering not everybody fits every scheme?
Yeah, I know, and there'll be a lot of guys, in terms of the roster that may not be ideal fits for what coach is doing, and I'll let him talk about scheme and all that stuff. But in regards to a player like Charles that said, yeah, I mean, they're excited to work with Charles because they had said they had liked him, previously coming out of college when they had seen him at Missouri. So they're going to work with him. They think they can do some things that will help him. Charles is, coming with the wrist thing, trying to get healthy now, but they're excited for his future. But yeah, whenever you change schemes and coaches, there's always going to be some misfit pieces. But the one good thing that you love about Brian is what he does in New England. He's found a way to get guys to play better, and so hopefully that's the case here.
Thanks, guys. 13. I don't know if you're aware of this.
Thanks, Mike.
Because you're
Thanks, Mike.
visitors. Can I get this? Sure. I'd like to.